there, ladies and gents. Today I wanted to talk about another impromptu topic. One that builds upon what we talked about in What the Darkness Conceals. As far as the realm of the unknown, the unseen is concerned, we'll be delving into the imagination's role in it. Now, us humans, we are capable of a function called intuition, with which, through means that aren't necessarily obvious, we're able to draw conclusions of remarkable accuracy. As if there is almost an instinctive understanding. And the most basic form that we have of this, the one most familiar to us, is in fact our imagination. Not so much the visualization you're capable of in your head, although that's a certain very large aspect to it, but the sort of games, games. If any of you ever raised a kid, hell, if you remember back to the time when you were a kid, you were always afraid of what went bump in the dark, weren't you? That's what I'm talking about. As far as our imagination is concerned, we are capable of understanding certain aspects about certain things, and take for example darkness. We understand that it's very perilous. Our eyes aren't capable of providing us information when they're shrouded in darkness. And so we begin to associate the darkness with a certain danger, as with presuming that there are very scary creatures that lurk within it. So as little Susie would believe. Okay, so we talked about the more base version of this, the one the most familiar to us, but to a certain extent, our imagination has actually been very useful in creating some of the best details in pop culture, and even the Greek intellectuals leveraged it. In what way, you're asking? Mythology. Mythology is man's most ancient and possibly the most remarkable bounds in psychology and in metaphysical understanding, as well as even to a certain extent science. These legends are very accurate, always very useful attempts at coming to understand all of these things that were once so far from us. Today, yes, they're outdated, but even then there are bits and pieces of truth strewn about that speak to the heart and soul of humanity and the way it interacts with the world. For instance, so many of the creation myths, even if you're not religious, there's a lot of value in understanding so much of how the world's composition could be woven about, could be wrestled with, and fashioned in to what we see around us. How the waves could be woven, how plants and vegetation could be the teeth of some primordial giant. There's quite a bit to the complexity of these great bounds of intuition known as mythology. And as a result, speak volumes to what we understand today. In taking all these creation myths to their to their logical fulfillment, we understand that now everything is comprised of atoms. From an atomic level, we build up until we form molecules, the proper substances themselves. So to say that everything has been fashioned out of bits and pieces of another is actually quite accurate. Aside from not only the more micro scale, but on the macro scale, things have been fashioned from great and powerful things beyond our comprehension almost. And in taking things that are great, powerful, beyond our comprehension, and such things do exist, by distilling them through the means of our imagination, we can come to understand their very arcane form. And it is through this symbology, made possible through the imagination, that the esoteric is made exoteric, the public becomes capable of consuming that which is very deep, very difficult to understand. So it goes from myth to proper media, to literature, to movies. There's nothing wrong with most of us thinking and being able to compress very insights of a very high caliber into symbols, into mediums. It's a very efficient means to which we may, if you would build a great repository of knowledge. And with these functions, yes, to a certain extent, it may limit our ability to fully, as we must translate the great and the vast into such compressed mediums. There's certainly some things to be lost in translation, but consequently, we get the best of both worlds, where, yes, we may be, in fact, be able to, we are able to understand some of the greatest mysteries here within the cosmos and the universe, and of God, the arts, all of that good stuff. And at the same time, we're able to enjoy the simplicities that we see before us. We are able to convey it to one another, all of these things. To be human is to enjoy the whole experience, really. We are, in fact, the most privileged entities above all of creation, all of the animal kingdom, even the heavenly host. Humans are blessed with the most rich and fulfilling experience. And speaking about the heavenly host, when we look within the book of Revelation, the symbology there too is very rich. A series of events of a magnitude of cosmic scale have been outlined for us, and whether or not they are to be understood in the most literal possible sense, well, I believe that's a topic for another day. But even then, when we take a look at such allegories, do we not see that as the veil is lifted, as the apocalypse comes over us, the deeper and deeper we stare into these things, the more and more harrowing it becomes. And so we use the imagination. We compress down into symbols in order to keep our sanity about us, in order to prevent the horrible trauma wrought on by a sort of cosmic level of realization, something that our minds aren't fully built to comprehend, at least not readily. We can fall back upon the use of symbolism. And if all else fails, we simply remain steeped in ignorance. A common theme in literature is oftentimes to raise a great deal of stakes, is to put the world at peril. That's oftentimes a plot device. But the problem with that is that not only have we not built an important relation with all of the entire world, this literary world, we only have connections to the characters we read about and care about the most. When we bring in the concept of the world, not only can we not relate to it, most of us can't relate to it in its entirety. It is not familiar to us. We do not fully understand it, so we can't even romanticize that which we don't have the slightest semblance of an understanding of. And not only that, but the sheer magnitude, the sheer size of it is something that we have a difficult time grasping. Not only must we take a great span of time to become familiarized with the world in and of itself and all of its various facets, but we too must understand its scope in the grander picture. And, well, we work from the inside out. We are at the center of all things that happen to us, ladies and gentlemen. And consequently, it's difficult to see things from the outside in. Only we take the time to look at another person, and even then, our ability to peer into the lives, the bubbles of other people, if you would, where each and every man is a bubble or an island unto himself. He can only peer into one at one time. And can we understand others in their entirety? Well, to a certain extent, yes. But it requires the function of compression or the ability to compress that I've spoken before through allegory and symbology. Take, for instance, the pagan gods of old, entities like Zeus, Poseidon, Shiva, all of those. They encompass certain parts of ourselves, certain aspects of personality, certain intricacies of life. Whatever that aspect is, when we begin to put it into something even remotely human, into an actual entity, it begins to become familiar to us. And while gods aren't necessarily the most relatable thing, it does, having the status of a deity, enables it to have a sort of position of reverence. And so that which is important to us, we tend to enshrine as a consequence. We worship at the altar of our highest virtues, do we not? There are some that value the virtue of equality. There are others that talk about freedom. Others still value the most stability. And, well, all these virtues are, of course, all in and of themselves good. What ends up happening as we begin to try to leverage them, as they begin to take on certain personas even, that's when the corruption can set in. As a result, we divide ourselves into castes, or different strata, different niches, different groups, different aggregates, factions, vying and warring for that which we believe. And again, none of these virtues are oftentimes what we tend to enshrine isn't actually bad. It's actually very much of heaven, very much of God. It's the persona that surrounds the actual heart of the matter. It's the supposed entity and its gathering that tends to be the problem. It's where we go astray. There is a certain hierarchy of good, of what ought to be valued, of higher things that are above us, conceptually. And so, ladies and gentlemen, this is where I'll bring it together. When it comes to understanding the face of God, when it comes to understanding the immaterial, we oftentimes, to get the best accurate result, we have to use metaphysical means, such as faith. However, in the event that we cannot do it, and we must study these things in a more academic sense, or words fail us, we will use symbology, we'll use allegory, and core and essential to all these things lies our imagination, lies our ability to conceptualize and scaffold upon that which is most not only innate and primordial to us, but that which seems most beyond us, and therefore we're able to make it more relatable, more real. Thank you all for the time. This has been The Wicked Generation, and we are its redeemed. Please follow me on Instagram at we.r_wicked, and comment down below. I would love to see and hear what you have to say about the video, and my musings about the unknown and our ability to begin to understand it via the means of the imagination and intuition. Take care all of you. Peace be upon you all, and until the next time, thank you.